Hey guys, it's Yishan here, back with another video. Today's video is my top 10 super poly targets for 2020 and beyond. And spoiler alert, there are more than 10 cards on this list. I had to group some cards together in certain spots because they're basically all serving the same purpose. So that's where this is going. Now, super poly is a card that is near and dear to my heart. It's a centerpiece in a lot of Grandmaster OTK strategies, but it can be used in any sort of deck that likes to fuse away your opponent's monsters. Who doesn't like doing that? Well, I certainly do. So let's take a look, starting at our number 10 spot with our 4 honorable mentions. I know 4 is a little excessive, but I wanted to get in every card that I thought was a viable super poly target. So let's go with number 1 out of 4. First, the dragons. It takes 2 more monsters. It's basically protected by anything that has to do with an effect monster, battle, or card effect. Now, 2 normal monsters, not going to come up very often. However, my thoughts are if there's ever a token archetype that comes around, First of the Dragons may be a good card to consider because of the fact that tokens are in fact normal monsters. So a card to consider: Panzer Dragon, 1 machine, 1 dragon. If these monster types ever happen to mix, this may be a card you want to consider. Okay, next up we have a card called Brotherhood of the Firefist Swan. This was released in Fist of the Gadgets along with a bunch of Brotherhood of the Firefist support. However, its materials, 2 Beast Warrior monsters. If there's ever a Beast Warrior deck that's in the meta, maybe Zodiac. That's a thought. A thought maybe. You know, especially with Negalogia AA Zeus coming out, this could be a valid super poly target. It's also level 8, so if you got any rank 8 Xyz plays you want to make, this is where you want to be. Okay, our last card is a card not released yet. It's called Guilty Gearfried, this Steel Knight or something like that. Basically, it takes 2 warrior monsters with different attributes. Warrior decks are always going to be popular, so I'm really looking forward to seeing this card and maybe including it in some of my extra decks. Okay, let's move on to our number 9 spot now. At our number 9 spot, we have a card called Borreload Furious Dragon. It takes 2 Dark Dragon monsters. And the reason this is at my number 9 spot is because it is very, very, very specific. It needs 2 Dark Dragons. Well, however, it does make up for some of that specific requirement in its effect because it does have a quick effect pop. Very, very useful. This is something you want to play if you're very, very confident that you're going to see a lot of Dark Dragon decks in the meta. You have to be very confident to play this in your extra deck, and that's why I have it a pretty low ranking, number 9. Number 8 is a card called Drago Necro Nethersoul Dragon. Now, this is interesting because previously, 2 zombie monsters, well, there's really no point in playing this because Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, it takes 2 darks, and zombies were almost always darks if you saw them in the meta, so there was really no point. You might as well just play Starving Venom Fusion Dragon. However, with the rise of Eldritch, this card is a valid super poly target. You know, you take a Golden Lord and one of their traps, boom, there you go, you can make this bad boy. Its effect, however, is a little weird. It can't destroy stuff by battle and it summons tokens, but it is level 8. However, there is a new card coming out, and it is a Eldritch Fusion that takes 1 Eldritch monster and 1 level 5 or high zombie monster. Basically the same thing, you take the Golden Lord, the trap. It is level 10, but it has a lot of attack points, 3800, 3500 defense, and it has this cool effect where you can take control of face-up monster your opponent controls, and all that sort of thing. So it's got some really neat effects. A card to consider if you are struggling against Eldritch. Okay, at my number 7 spot, we have Predaplant Triff Gaming. Now, I don't really know how to say the rest of the card, but it takes 3 dark monsters on the field. This card is interesting because it's very powerful. However, there is a more generic, again, Starving Venom Fusion Dragon only takes 2 darks. However, you're gaining, again, you see this trade-off a lot. You're getting more restricted materials, but you get a better effect. This thing can negate a summon of an opponent's monster that's from the extra deck. So very powerful. If you see a lot of dark decks in your meta, you can consider making this. It's pretty funny if you get this out. It's sucking 3 darks up. I mean, your opponent's usually going to have a really tough time coming back from that. At our number 6 spot, we have a card called Dragon Knight Draco Equest. This is an interesting one because this one just came back into the meta due to the fact that Infernal Knights summons a Borreload Savage Dragon, which is a dragon type single monster, and an Infernal Knight Charles, which is a warrior type monster. Now, my man Loza from the Grandmaster Facebook page, he was the one that brought this card to my attention, so here's your shout out. I'm sorry I didn't shout you in the last video. I do apologize. But basically it's just a big beater. It helps break Infernal Knight boards, something you definitely want to consider, and that's why it's this high on this list. It's number 6 because of the fact that it has some meta applications. Okay, number 5 on the list is a card called Earth Golem at Ignister. Earth Golem at Ignister, 1 Cyberus monster, 1 Link monster. A lot of times this is basically reading 2 Link monster because there are so many Cyberus Link monsters. However, a lot of times, you're just getting rid of like an IP Masquerena and something else, or like a Trigate board or Salamangreat board or any sort of random stuff. Like I once used this against Gokis. A very, very interesting card, or Link Kariba, a classic target for this as well. Now, a lot of people I see sometimes recommend a card called World Chalice Guard Dragon Almarduke. Now, in my opinion, this card is not worth playing since Earth Golem at Ignister exists. If you're breaking a board with multiple Link monsters, Earth Golem at Ignister is just going to be better. If there are 3 Link monsters on the field, it is almost guaranteed that one of them is a Cyberus monster, and so there's really no point. Earth Golem at Ignister also has a cool effect. When it attacks a monster special from an extra, it can just run it over, so beating over is no problem. You don't really use its graveyard effect unless you're playing at Ignister, but I don't really see a reason to play World Chalice Guard Dragon Almarduke over an Earth Golem at Ignister. Okay, for our number 4 spot on the list, we have a card called Panzer Dragon Stapelia. This card requires 1 fusion and 1 dark monster, and surprisingly, Drago Stapelia comes up quite often. A lot of Invoked running around, a lot of Predaplant, Verte, and Anaconda running around. Surprisingly, Predaplant Drago Stapelia is preying on its own kind, but Predaplant, Verte, Anaconda, it summons, Dragoon, boom, I'll take that. And Drago Stapelia has a very, very nice quick effect. It has a very nice defensive effect. You can place a Predator counter on a monster, and basically it has its activated effects negated. Now, it's important to remember that these are only its activated effects. I've made the mistake a few times thinking Predaplant Drago Stapelia actually negated continuous effects, but it doesn't. Also, if Predaplant Drago Stapelia leaves the field, then that monster's activated effects are no longer negated because it's part of its continuous effect that negates the activated effects. So just something to be aware of. Comes up all the time. Comes up, back in the day, it used to come up in Thunder Dragon matchups. So definitely something worth playing in your extra deck. Highly recommend it. For my number 3 target, I've got Mud Dragon of the Swamp. The reason I have Mud Dragon number 3 is because it's just like the random target that, if you play it a long event, it's probably going to come out if you're running Super Poly, because they're just like some random decks or random situations where this card can come out. And I mean, for example, this card's good against Subterror. It can randomly come out against, like Madolche or whatever, right? Trap Tricks, just random stuff. Its targeting effect can be very useful. I mean, this card can even fuse away like Heroic's Feel and a Herald of the Arc Light, just random stuff like that. Its targeting effect is important to note because actually, a lot of times people think that when you attempt to switch, like I'm going to say Mud Dragon, I'm going to call Fire Attribute to prevent fire monsters from being targeted. A lot of times your opponent might try to chain something like the Imperm to target that Mud Dragon. However, that actually doesn't work because Mud Dragon is a water before it activates its effect, and your opponent still can't target water. So just something to note that Mud Dragon can actually never be targeted by card effects from your opponent. Also, really cool thing to note is that it doesn't say just your monsters. Your opponent can't target their own monsters with card effects. Now, this is really interesting because, for example, in the Subterror matchup, if you use Mud Dragon of the Swamp to call Earth, your opponent has a tough time using Subterror Fiendus because Fiendus actually needs to target the Subterror monster. Really cool little trick there, and something that I suggest you guys try. It makes Subterror players really confused when they're calling Earth, and when the realization hits them, they're like, oh crap. So really cool card. Recommend you play this in your extra deck if you're running Super Poly. Now, at our number 2 slot, it's my favorite Super Poly target of all time, Starving Venom Fusion Dragon. 2 dark monsters on the field except tokens. We all know Konami loves darks, and so this card is just, it's coming out all the time. If it's fusion summoned, you can gain some attack, which can be nice. I find its most relevant effect is actually the one that if it's destroyed, you can destroy all of your opponent's special summoned monsters. I find that to be pretty useful, especially if you're playing defense and you're trying to stop your opponent from OTKing you. You put this guy in defense and they attack it. It basically stops their plays for the turn. Okay, so that's my number 2 spot. It's actually my favorite Super Poly target overall. Notice how it says accept tokens. That makes me think that if there's ever like a dark token archetype, First of the Dragons may need to come in. So that's an interesting thing to remember. This cannot suck up tokens with Super Poly. Okay, so you might be asking me, Yishan, what is your number one spot then, if this is your favorite card? Well, my number one spot is actually a flexible spot, and I dedicated the number one spot to archetype fusions. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, let's take a look. In Phantom Rage, Prank Kids look at a new Link 1. They will be a popular deck. If you look at your current extra deck, most current Super Poly extra decks, the only thing that can maybe hit Prank Kids is if they go for a Predaplant, Verte, Anaconda play, you could use Drago, Stapelia there. But you don't have anything for Super Poly. But if Prank Kids is going to be a very popular deck, then it might be worth it to put a Prank Kids Weather Washer in your deck to be able to fuse away 2 of your opponent's Prank Kids monsters. Now, I chose Weather Washer because it is slightly better than the Rocket Prank Kids in a generic deck, because this one has like an Armade effect that prevents effects activating during the battle phase, basically. So something that is worth considering is, hey, let's just take a look at the meta. Now, when you watch this video, the meta might be totally different, but like, for example, when Blazing Vortex comes out, maybe Metal Foes will be meta. Well, just take a look at the Metal Foes fusion. See what kind of fusions the Metal Foes archetype has, and maybe you can use their own fusions against them with Super Poly. That's why I dedicated this to the number one spot, these archetype-centric fusions, because they can come up in any meta, and so you're understanding the meta and using these fusions can catch people by surprise. Another great example of this card is Salmonella Violet Chimera. It's a more generic Salamangreat fusion. Now, since it's level 8, I like it in Grand Maju, but again, you know, if Salamangreat is popular, this is something to put in your extra deck, you know? These are the kind of decisions you can make that can really, you know, get your opponent off guard. Like, you know, if your opponent's playing Metal Foes, like, there's no way this guy can Super Poly me, right? And then boom, you Super Poly them, boom, you get your Metal Foes target out. Right? Really, 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 really cool. So that is my suggestion, you guys. If you guys are struggling with a deck that seems like it doesn't have anything to be super polyed, just go take a look. There's plenty of random fusions in this game. Just the other day, I was playing a rogue format, and I was like, man, my super poly is useless against Plunder Patrol. And then I'm like, you know, after the game, I was like, wait, what the heck? It's rogue format. I can literally, I looked, there's a Plunder Patrol fusion, takes 2 Plunder Patrol monsters. That would have been so useful in my match. So, something to look out for. No matter what format you're playing, just take a look at what's popular and see if they have any fusions that you can abuse against them. Alright guys, that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned a little something. Comment below, tell me what your favorite Super Poly target is. Until next time guys, I will see you in the next video.